Okay, I think we're good. All right, welcome everyone. This is another episode of Cannabis Marketing Live. I'm your host, Jake Lidke, CEO at MediaGel. Today we are going to be talking about the Cannabis Marketing Survival Guide, state-by-state playbook. We will be going over learnings that our team has found over the years in watching markets develop and launch. And today I'm quite excited because we have our A team here. I am obviously biased, but I believe that we have the best domain experts in the different topics we will be covering today. We have Courtney Brown, our Chief Marketing Officer. She handles, well, if you're here, it's because she did the work to get you here, because she handles all of the Media Gel brand. We have Jenny Shi, who's our VP of Media Strategy. She handles all of the media strategy for our programmatic buying. And then we have Megan Oliver, who goes by Mo. And Mo is our SVP of Strategy and Partner Success. She handles all of our organic, as well as managing success for our advertisers. So maybe what we'll do, I'd like to start this off because usually everyone's behind the scenes, but now we're out in front. We'll start with Mo and just do like a real quick intro of like the cliff notes on how you found your way into the cannabis marketing world. I think it's helpful to get some context, and we'll go around the screen here, and then we'll kick it off.
Sure. I came in through other media channels with um, the the background primarily being in technology content. I was also a cannabis grower for many years in Oregon, where I live. So I had the cannabis experience to support the media experience.
Great. Jenny?
Well, I've done advertising, some level of it my whole life. I started in analytics first, and then when I first left the agency world and went to brand side, I went to Charlotte's Web. So that was really sort of my first stepping stone into hemp and cannabis. My brain, I really wanted to have just challenges every day. I wanted to get back into the agency world where things move a little bit faster, have more opportunity to innovate. And I had the opportunity to come here at MediaGel and just really jump in with 2 feet in the regulated cannabis space. So that's my
Great.
story.
Okay, well, I will openly admit that I was a huge stoner in high school. I went to Humboldt State University, so, towed that line through there, the Emerald Triangle. I did own my own marketing agency, and I had a horrible back issue and started using CBD for that pain. And it just kind of opened me up to, wow, there's a lot of brands that really need some marketing power behind them. And I started in the CBD industry in about 2020 and then got hired by Foot Traffic, and MediaGel acquired us, and that is how I'm here.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, let's kick it off. We have a lot to talk about. Hopefully, we'll get through everything in our allotted time. All right, so we're going to start from the beginning here, which is the idea here is a playbook for go-to-market for a dispensary. So you have got a license, you've got a lease, you have a store, you're going to open that store. A lot of people assume that just because you open the store, people are going to come. And that is true to a certain extent. The people in the neighborhood will see that you've opened a store and some people will come, but you need to actually have a go-to-market strategy. There's a lot of pieces to that. And if you start early, you will encounter better success as your business grows. So let's start with the kind of the research phase, right? So you've got a new location, or maybe you already have some locations, you're opening a new location. What research, Mo, should someone start with thinking about to get market share when they open up?
Yeah, as a former um, magazine editor, research is everything, and that applies in the discovery phase of opening a dispensary as well. The two key areas I would consider are competitive mapping and license density. What I would recommend is a cluster exercise. You can look at a bunch of ways to do this online, but if you look at dispensaries not only that are in your area, but what are going to have other similarities to you that are maybe similar hours, similar geographies relative to traffic patterns. So what is the, are you in a commuter area? Are you in downtown? Like where and when, what time of day are people going to be likely to come by your store? Other important aspects are price anchors. So looking at what the promotion norms are. Not every state allows promotions, but if there is promotion allowed in your state, it's important to understand what other people are doing. There are some hacks to the discount landscape. In particular, when it comes to product, I would consider finding with your other competitors that you've mapped what you think of as your like oversupplied or undersupplied categories, and try to fill that gap there. And then another exercise I would recommend for the research phase is an archetype exercise. It's a branding exercise. You can think of it as three key perspectives that your potential customers might have, and this is all exploratory, right? Like, don't be too precious if your foot traffic ends up telling you otherwise after 3 months. But if you think kind of three archetypes of the type of people who will be coming in, whether it is, I'm a cannabis mom, uh, like, or young professionals, college students, whatever it is, you can really learn how to position yourself for the markets that are around you, that are most likely to come to your store. From a community sentiment standpoint, it really depends on this. If you're a new dispensary in a new market, or if you're a new dispensary in an established market, but definitely doing research on who's new to, like, if you think your market's new to cannabis or really experienced, if you were a medical state, and you're now transitioning to a rec state, really like what the lifestyle drivers are. And lastly, and very importantly, is the regulatory environment. How regulation will constrain or enable growth tactics in some in some cases, and you just really want to get friendly with the statutes in your state, because knowing the ins and outs, especially when it comes to being ready to activate advertising, whether you're allowed to show cannabis flower or not in your state in your ads. Like I mentioned, discounts. There are a lot of specificities in each state's law that you want to, again, get really friendly with, because you're going to be checking them against everything that you do in your early days. And then if you just kind of establish that from the get-go, then it'll just kind of become second nature. If you skip this work, marketing is less efficient. So obviously our hat here is marketing. So these are all just preparations to launch your store, but knowing all these things going into your marketing inform it. And, laying this foundation will save you a lot of money. Like trial and error is expensive and time consuming. So this shortcuts a lot of that.
Yeah, on the state regulation side, something that people may or may not be aware of, and this does vary quite a bit by state, is that sometimes you need time for your ads to get approved. There's several states now where your actual each creative needs to get approved by the state. You cannot count on that happening in a timely manner. Sometimes it's an individual that's responsible for that, and they might go on vacation. You're going to launch your store, and none of your ads are approved, and you're kind of stuck from an awareness perspective, waiting for that to happen. On the other side, you also obviously don't want to run things that are not compliant. You get yourself in trouble with the regulators. And then one other thing that you mentioned that I want to touch on, Mo, is the archetype thing, right? So I think you said, yeah, don't be too precious about it, but it is good to understand the demographics of where you're shopping. Economics are an important factor, how you price things, what type of products are you going to be selling, and then even the discounting strategy or promotional strategy. There's a difference between offering 20% off on something and offering $20 off of a $100 purchase. Those two types of math operations resonate differently with different types of people depending on what their economic status is. And so understanding that is important. All right, let's move on to which is kind of a natural progression here, which is like the positioning of your brand, your products, how you want to demonstrate who you are to your market. Jenny, how would you approach this? Because I know you've done this, I mean, kind of writ large at Charlotte's Web, where you're going after a national audience, which means you have to define it across a lot of different places. It's a little bit easier when you're in a specific area, attacking like a 10-mile radius or something. How do you approach this?
Yeah. Something that we can always start with is having a market white space analysis, right? Diving in, pulling data, pulling research, and trying to understand in your local area, are there any underserved markets or are there specific niche interests? Are there product categories that are not as available or as accessible? But then also, I like to kind of sit back and think about it for a little bit in terms of like, where are we targeting and who are these people and what are their consumer mindsets? You're going to hear me talk about consumer mindsets a lot probably today. It's one of my favorite things. Is this a place where people are commuting to? Because that can actually widen your geo, right? Maybe it's not a 10-mile radius. Maybe you can increase your targeting. And maybe that ends up meaning that you have several more types of consumer mindsets to think about. Is this a college town or is this a very small, sort of tight-knit community? They know each other's names. They might all go to the same church, right? They all have county fairs and they really want to have more boots on the ground sort of engagement with you. And so knowing that local consumer mindset or several of them and really kind of diving deep into what makes them tick and what's important to them can help you define how you maybe approach your merchandising or even just like the layout and the ambience of your store. Like, are you going to have more of a local feel? Are you going to look like a Starbucks roastery kind of situation? And it can also define how you do local outreach as well. I would say the other thing too is if we dive deeper into sort of this consumer mindset thing, you know, um, just kind of giving an example of how we try to understand personas and motivations, but then also how to kind of activate against that audience. There's a lot of this pre-research that's done that it might go into the proposal and it's really up to the client to decide if they want to act on it, right? But we had a client who asked us, hey, we're opening up this new location. It is a tiny little town. This town, they're known for interest in hunting. They have a rodeo. They do have a county fair, and that's what kind of brings tourism in. They also have a golf resort up north, also brings in tourism. That already alone has several different interest groups we could consider. And so places that we would start, there's planning tools. One of my favorite ones is Distillery. They have out-of-the-box audiences. They're kind of just exactly like an Epsilon or a Blue Kai or something like that. But we also create custom audiences with them based on people who have shown interest in terms like cannabis near me, dispensary near me, bongs, things like that. And we can take that data set and hone it down to a DMA level. And what it does is it spits out this report that says, okay, this audience that you're looking at, we're going to compare it to our entire database of all these other, audiences that we have, behavioral, as well as all the content clusters of what they are looking at and showing us what index is highest for all of them. And in my opinion, all data is interesting, but we have to evaluate what data actually goes into the end recipe, right? Data is not perfect, and it can also be really messy. But if we start to align that with things that we have found or have understood about the town, we can start to pinpoint those certain mindsets. So things like hunting did show up pretty high there, county fair, rodeo, things like that. And so what I ended up doing was I found their county economic chamber of alliance and I called them. And the reps there, really, really great to work with. And we wanted to just come up with certain ways of how to get this dispensary to be able to engage even before they've opened their doors, but especially after they've opened their doors. And so we talked about different ways that they could engage and sponsor their holiday parade or different local community events, or were there any sort of social equity things that were important to their local community that they could be involved in. And one of the things that we found out was the Chamber of Alliance, they have facilities in their building. And during hunting season, when they have, hunting tourism coming into town, there is a portion of those hunters that are just bringing a tent. Like they need facilities, and so they'll pay for a voucher to be able to shower, use the bathroom, things like that. And so we were able to talk with the Chamber of Alliance and provide a proposal where we also sponsored those vouchers, had some advertising, maybe have a little bit like a discount coupon or something involved in that. And that's really something where, because this was such a local type of small knit community activation, we were focusing a lot more of that boots on the ground, get in the hands of the people there in something that is not even digital, which is Media Gel's bread and butter. And so that level of understanding of your local community can be really important. And I wanted to touch on something you mentioned about price and promotion. I think, having any sort of pre-research on understanding your mindset can really help you decide out of the gate how you want to approach that promotion. Is your local area, if we go on like search trend tool type of platforms, or if I go into SEMrush and look at different websites of businesses that already are there, are people looking up things like coupons, discounts? Are they deal shoppers? Does deal shoppers show up in my distillery report, right? And if they are, then maybe there are ways that you can create a promotion that's not even just a math problem, but I've even tried to pitch this a few times, which is if you can actually set up your infrastructure on your loyalty program right at the upfront, is there something where you can offer 6 months of a 20 to 30% discount or $20 off of whatever number, right? Discount on a specific product or product category of the month, which then actually gives the flexibility to the customer to decide what they want to merchandise and what they want to feature as their main product or product category of the month. But it also gets somebody to come back at least 6 times, hopefully, right? At least once a month to try to drive that discount and build that loyalty with the bud tender. Because your bud tender relationship is so powerful in getting that person to come back. And so the idea there is really to get them to continue to have that frequency of purchase. But if we talk about this being a commuter kind of town or city, like I'm from New York City. I lived there before. I now am in Colorado and Boulder and Stoner City. If you think about someone coming from like the very affluent neighborhoods in Connecticut and they're commuting to New York, there's a couple of things that we actually already know about this audience, but one of the things, if we want to put ourselves in their shoes, is do I really want to, bring flour with me? Do I want to have a big bong? Maybe at home, but if I'm going towards the city where the location might be opening, maybe that audience is going to want something a little bit more sleek, a little bit lower in judgment value, something like a vape, maybe some gummies that they can hide in their bag. But the other thing we know about these folks is actually like a lot of them, they're playing mobile app games on their commute, right? Candy Crush. This is kind of their moment of self-care that they have for themselves during the day before they have to do the rigmarole of work and people and activities. And so when we have these different types of consumer mindsets and we start to understand what is important to them, but also how they want to be reached, that can impact, am I going to have deals? Am I going to have a stronger deal? Am I going to push a specific type of product category? And then where am I going to reach them? Is it going to be mobile apps? Is it going to be through vouchers, print, CTV? So I could probably ramble on for a while. Stop me anytime. But I
Yeah.
would say those are probably like three of the top places that I would start first.
Okay, so just quick summary. The example you gave on positioning is for, understand the market you're serving. And in the instance you gave, that's a like rural tourism sort of hunting state fair type of situation, but it could just as easily be somewhere that has music festivals, right?
Hmm.
And so there is definitely we had what was it called? Oh, Mary in Maine was on last week or a couple weeks ago, and they put a lot of effort into being part of the community, right? So identifying the things inside of the community that people resonate with, and then aligning yourself with that, supporting those local businesses. Because if you're doing promotions and advertising with local businesses, then you're joining that community, and you're going to have a lot better uptake inside of that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so let's go. Let's talk about launching. We'll break this up into first 30 days, 30 to 60 days, 60 to 90 days. Let's start with days 1 through 30, Mo, and just talk about, and we can do this pretty quickly, just kind of like the checklist. And I'm sure Courtney maybe will follow this up with an article we can send out to everyone that highlights some of these these checklists and topics that we have. So
Oh yeah,
where
we
do we
have
start? What's the oh, sorry, what's that?
playbooks for every single market type. So new, growth, and mature. So stay tuned. You guys will get those after the webinars.
Perfect. All right. So opening month, Mo, what's the checklist that you would give people?
Absolutely. All right. So, as I already mentioned, compliance. There are a lot of aspects of this to make sure you are assessing. It's your creative compliance, whether that's what you're launching for advertising or what you're putting, up as the signage in your store, brochures that you're handing out. Just make sure that any state mandated disclosures are in there. That's like the in-person activation, digital activation. You need to make sure your website is age gated. That's very important in this industry. And the having your organic presence set up online is both from a are you coming up in Google Google Maps? Are you making sure that your address is there? So people are searching for a non-branded term, as we say in organic, meaning just like a dispensary in X city, they're seeing you. You also need tracking so that you can understand what is actually happening. From an organic standpoint, that means getting Google Analytics set up. AI tracking is becoming more and more important, understanding where people are finding you, whether it's in Chat GPT or Perplexity. And that's a huge driver, AI, of new customers. It's a very teeny tiny portion so far of total customers, but it is higher indexed toward new customers. And so very important for launch. Your ad tracking, if you're launching with ads, Google Tag Manager, your website conversion tracking. That one is a sticky point when we are launching campaigns for a lot of customers. It needs to be on your CMS. It needs to be on your e-com. So just making sure that you have, developers who are testing that to make sure that you are set up properly so that you actually have tracking in place. And then I also want to emphasize that assets can be your staff. So we talked a bit about your bud tenders. Training in that first pre-launch and time for your dispensary is so important that they understand the education standards of your market, especially if it's a mature cannabis market. You want to make sure that that your staff can really speak to all of the products and what you are using as your differentiator or your brand position, and how each product kind of pertains to that. So there are a lot of brand owned media compliance. You want compelling offers for emails and loyalty programs as well, so that you can, um, you know, resonate with the customers you want to speak to again and again. They will remember how you make them feel from the jump. So having all this in place in days 1 through 30 is super important. Defining a tone and a vibe for your brand. And if you are integrating marketing technology from the beginning, making sure that it's a tech stack that'll grow with you. And I think if I were to sum up the first 30 days, it's about building awareness, credibility, and consistency more than thinking about demand. The demand will come in the later phases. What you want is to make sure that you're speaking to, making sure there's a clear reason someone should choose you in those first 30 days so that you can start that retention journey.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's sort of, do you want to say something,
31
Courtney?
through 60.
31
Yeah.
through 60. Yes.
I'm gonna just add on, Mo, you have a great baseline there. Don't forget to start your SEO. It's so important. You should start building that SEO foundation, do your SEMrush analysis of the competitor landscape, and start building those branded, dispensary near me keyword terms and start ranking. It's so important. And a lot of businesses fall short there. And then it can be really hard to catch up.
It takes
But
time.
days, sorry.
Yeah, no, start from the beginning because it takes so much time, right? Like
Yes.
it's like start at day 1 so that by day 90 you have some momentum.
Exactly. Yeah. So days 31 through 60, I'm thinking of you're trying to introduce yourself, your brand, and you're starting a relationship with the community. So you really want to start leaning into that brand story. So you have brand recognition before the doors open. What is your unique value prop? So many businesses can't really verbalize this well, and that should really align with the competitive analysis that you've done, not only with, who else is in your market, but how they're speaking to your audiences, which Jenny really touched on. Building familiarity and trust digitally. You have to start doing this. And the ways that you can do that is by starting with social media, building your brand story, having a video on your website. You're trying to really earn attention at this point. And don't forget, everything has to be compliant. Your marketing priorities in days 31 through 60 are going to be first understanding what channels are compliant and that you are allowed to advertise on. So, display, CTV, digital out of home. Some states can't run Google ads. Some states need approval of ad creatives before you can launch. Can you launch billboards? What kind of outdoor signage can you have? Do you have to have your windows blacked out, right? There's a lot of things that go into that. Confirming your audience targeting, age gating, geo-targeting rules in your state are incredibly important. You do not want to launch something and then, have a compliance board fine you. It's not a great feeling. So once you have all of your compliance and understanding of the cannabis marketing that is available to you in your state and area, then you can start getting creative. That's where I feel this isn't quite the time to do the countdown for opening. That will be in the next phase. But what you can do is start building those digital campaigns, launch them on social media, launch that video on your website, and see how you're communicating that value prop, see how people are engaging, build that SEO foundation and the trust with education focused blogs and posts. But you can start to analyze what messages are resonating, which creative formats are getting the most attention. And what that will help you do is when you are ready to advertise, you'll already know what content people like to engage with. You'll already be able to see what ads are likely to perform best because you leaned into your brand story instead of just tossing out discounts like, competitors may do. So by the end of day 60, you really want to make sure that your brand is recognizable in your market, that the message has really strong legs, your unique value prop is forward front. You've got your compliance down, you know what channels you want to go after, and your creative system is built. You've got a warm audience because they've been engaging with you. Um, so when you really shift into that 61 to 90 day mark, you're not launching cold. I think that's the difference between a really noisy opening versus a really strong one.
Yeah, and just to be clear on the timing here, because this might be slightly confusing, what we're talking about is the 90 days before you open your doors,
Yeah.
right? So I did start off the conversation saying you're going to open your doors and, but we're talking about what leads up to that so that you can have the most success on day one.
Yeah.
And then we can go, let's talk about 60 to 90. So, and in this timing, we're talking about now it's sort of inverted. These are the last 30 days prior to launch, right? So you could actually say it's 30 to 1 if we go backwards.
Go time. Go
Good.
time.
All right. Jenny, what do you got?
Yeah, so during this time, taking the learnings from what content is resonating with audiences, as well as all of that pre-research about your consumer mindsets and who is, the key targets that you want to go after. This is a really great time to consider having a grand opening campaign, having advertising launch about 2 to 3 weeks before your doors open. And with, the work that SEO is doing and all of that good jazz, you want to make sure you have a landing page to send this traffic to and collect their email address. Have that sign up offer ready, that 6-month loyalty program offer, or something else that makes sense for that community. So you can start to build up your email list ahead of time to really be able to then take that and nurture that audience after you guys have opened. With that too, there's the data that you've talked about. Maybe you've had conversations about how you want to have your bud tenders show up. You've already started training them, and you've already started thinking about that store layout. So this is really the time to kind of hone in and finalize what that in-store experience is going to look like. Are you going to be supporting your local band events and have posters up? And I walked into one of our local dispensaries the other day where they had someone who just started a small business making cookies. No cannabis in these cookies, but she was just there handing them out, right? Is this a local feel? Is this going to be sort of a luxurious feel? Are you going to have staff and members just kind of out there at the ready that aren't even the bud tenders that are going to make sure they're taking care of you, getting you water, right? Kind of a lounge experience. So really hone in at that point what that's going to look like. And then start to finalize what opening day looks like as well. Are you going to have a lot of staff boots on the ground there, right? Are you going to have some PR around it? Are you going to have a DJ come by? Are you going to have opening day goodie bags, right? That might have a discount in there, and maybe it elevates some of your key products and brands that you want to feature, or maybe it features like local vendor baked cookies that have no cannabis in them. What do you want it to look like? And then start to finalize that and plan your big day. And then finally, what I would say too is, from my analytics background, data infrastructure, very important. It's always great to set things up well at the upfront, ensure that the platforms, the POS, the tools that you are going to, start with and work with, do they work well together? Do they have API connections with each other? Do they tie to a measurement platform? But also at this point, it's always good to start considering, do I have the data that can feed into key KPIs that, you want to start measuring first before you start to push really strong goals against these. But things that you want to keep in mind is you want to know the average order value of your customers. You want to understand your customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost to get someone to come in to buy? Your marketing efficiency, right? Things like, people talk about ROI. There's also return over ad spend. There's also LTV. How do you start ensuring that how you're capturing your data will fuel your ability to see those KPIs be reported out? Of course, volume of customers. You want to know how many people are coming in and buying things, and your market penetration, right? You want to start capturing and understanding when you open your doors and you start bringing in customers, what is your market share and how is that growing over time?
Shameless plug here. We have all of this that we've talked about in our Media Gel Cannabis Marketing Academy. We talk about how to build a digital e-commerce funnel, what advertising strategies are. We have 12 or 13 units on SEO and building what that looks like to build it out, competitor analysis templates. Let's just can the www part, but mediagel.com/academy is where you can find all of that. And it really supports, the foundations and how to have a spectacular launch that is going to have people wrapped around the building waiting to get in and shop with you.
And that is free, by the way. That's just educational resources that you can access at your own leisure. Jenny, something you said about capturing data is super important. It's not necessarily critical that you deeply analyze it right away, but you definitely need to capture it because you will find information that will make you more successful. I've seen campaigns with even very simple analysis, just looking at which zip codes people are coming from in a given market and understanding where your brand is resonating, increase marketing efficiency by like 30% by just figuring out that, oh, this is where people are coming from that like to shop at my store.
That, and also like looking at search trends, right? Like
Yeah.
higher level metrics that aren't necessarily something where you need to set up infrastructure to see this data. You can just go to Google search trends and see if you are starting to come up as a rising term or not. You can start to make decisions about, do we have the cash to invest in upper funnel media like CTV and digital out of home? Because if you're entering a new market, even if it's a growth market, a totally new market, even a mature market, people need to know who you are. Just at what level you invest in that is different at those different type of market levels. And so it is a longer, play to conversion, but those are also metrics that I really like to see. Organic search volume and traffic, of course, as well. Super helpful to know if people are really starting to resonate with your name and are they coming to try to find you.
Yeah. So we've talked about your top channels, your local SEO, your Google business profile, your website needs to be set up correctly. If you're going to do some awareness, you can use digital channels. You can do billboards. Uh, One thing we haven't touched on too much, and this is, I think, really important for opening day is, and going forward, is you want to do everything you can to try to get your customers to give you some sort of contact information, whether that's email or text, because that's going to be your way to stay engaged with them and give them updates and send them offers, obviously. Um, but when you open, you want everything to go smoothly, obviously, but it may not, right? You may have hiccups, you might have staffing issues, may end up having slow wait times. Any number of things can happen, and someone may not come away 100% happy with their first experience. If you're able to capture their contact information, that gives you a second chance to re-engage them with some kind of offer or something else to get them back in the door, in the event that things didn't go as smoothly for some number of people that are, attending your opening week. All right, let's move on, because well, we're time's flying here, so we got some more stuff to get through. Let's talk about growth markets. We've seen this because we've been doing this for 8 years and we've seen markets come online and there is a cycle. There's variations in that cycle. Obviously, when the licenses first come out and your stores open up, there's usually not that much competition and everything looks like it's going to be fantastic. But then more stores open up, you have competitive pressure, people start discounting more heavily. Let's talk about what you see, Mo, because we are in this process right now. We're working with some of our MSO partners that are coming into new markets. They've had established markets, and we can see them come into new markets, and we can see what's happening. And we'll just set aside the individual differences in the state laws, right? Because there are some variations, but let's just not worry about that and just talk about sort of the macro life cycle and what happens in a market from year one through, when you start getting year two, year three. Oh, you're on mute.
The growth market is the speed at which it goes can really depend on how many licensors in a given state, like you say. But from a macro standpoint, um, there is rising customer demand typically in a growth market, whether it's transitioning from med to rec. We've seen a lot of those markets in my almost 5 years here at Media Gel. And to capture and sustain those customers through that transition and keep them coming back is how you really want to establish yourself in that growth market. You will see increasing CAC, right? Customer acquisition costs are as you get a little bit closer to that price compression timing that you're talking about, which will happen as a market becomes established. Your CAC is probably going to go up under those certain market conditions, and just be ready to embrace that and know that that's going to happen at a certain part of the life cycle of your growth market, and that I think that I'm sure everyone will touch on this as well, but just understanding from a mature market standpoint, again, back to what your differentiators are, what you are going to evolve in your strategy as you transition to a mature market, is really important.
Yeah, and just for people that might be listening that don't spend all day doing marketing, CAC is your customer acquisition cost, right? And so that's measured as like the total cost of your marketing efforts divided by the number of customers that you got. LTV is your lifetime customer value, and lifetime can be misleading because we're not really looking at the lifetime of the customer. Usually, you're measuring some period. It could be a quarter, it could be a year, it could be the lifetime. We've been working with some companies for years where we know the lifetime value of specific customers, and there are some people that have spent a lot of money on cannabis over the years, individuals. Um, and then what was we had CAC, we got LTV. I guess it was
Just like, yeah, starting to
yeah.
talk about price
Okay.
compression.
All right, so let's move on to There are a lot of marketing tools and there's a lot of marketing channels, and everyone's going to have a different mixture of staff that they have. You definitely want to leverage whatever skills you have in-house with your staff, but almost certainly you're not going to have a robust full marketing suite team like a large, CPG company might have. So you're going to have to make some decisions about what you want to do yourself versus what you want to buy. And maybe Courtney, you can talk a little bit about that.
I think this really depends on the talent that you have in-house. Most cannabis businesses are not going to have a dedicated media buyer like Jenny, um, that, really understands the ins and outs, or someone who really understands the ins and outs of how to stay compliant. Compliance moves so fast, things change so quickly, and especially if you're in multiple states, it can be kind of tricky. So what I think is in versus in-house versus agency, you really want in-house to own they need to have ownership of the long-term revenue. So what that kind of looks like is strategy, data, creative direction. That should and brand should be owned in-house, but media buying, paid execution, compliance, those things are probably best outsourced to a partner until you get large enough that you can, really bring someone on who understands the ins and outs of that. I think if I were staffing internally, I would prioritize someone that has strong SEO ownership, who really understands social media and how to build a presence in the local community, someone who knows how to activate events and wants to get involved in local PR and sponsorship opportunities. That's how I would balance in-house versus agency.
Yeah, and something you said resonates well, which is for the people that you have on site in your market, you want to have you're better served by having that expertise and passion close to home. Media buying can be done anywhere. Obviously, whoever's doing that needs to understand the market, but your media buyer is not the person that's going to be like, we're doing a promo. I'm going to go down to the store and hand out some merch, right? So you can kind of think about that way too, because most companies have limited resources that they can apply, and you're better served with your in-house talent being more local focused, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit because we're there's a lot of things we want to cover. We've talked about sort of the growth market. Because we've got about 15 minutes. So let's go to talk about saturated markets, right? So I don't need to call them out. Everyone knows which markets are saturated. Um, Jenny, let's talk about how, as an advertiser, you can make the needle move in a saturated market. What are, some strategies that you like to apply?
Can find my mute button. Yeah, so strategies in a saturated, mature market, it obviously needs a pretty big shift, right? At this point, like when you start to look at the different mindsets of people and where they might be shopping, Colorado, very saturated, of course. There's probably a dispensary on every other corner around my block. And so people, they often are either going to be just shopping around based on where there are deals. So they're very not loyal, or they are just going to go to the place that's closest to them. And so what we have to do is shift sort of our mentality from, okay, here are all the consumer mindsets we were super interested in during a new market or growth market, and really start to take our first party data to help us understand that person who walked into our doors once. How do we get them to continue to skip the dispensary that's closest to them, walk that extra block, and come back to us again? So this is where first party data starts to play a much bigger role in our strategy and how we want to activate, and retention with what we can do with acquisition becomes a much stronger place for us to get the data that we need to understand what makes somebody loyal. So that might look like breaking out your retention, customer base by several different LTV, lifetime value or otherwise you'll hear me call it a buy rate tier. So those are what is their actual lifetime value, but then you can break them out further in understanding, are they a frequent customer, an infrequent customer? Do they have high AOV? Do they have low AOV? And build different types of either loyalty perks around these people, or you can also build specific product promos and merchandising for those folks as well. The other thing too is, in a saturated market, you start to have price compression. Promos become less sexy because they're everywhere, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't lean into promos because all of a sudden, right, if they're all shopping around for deals, you're still trying to acquire them into your door as well. But when they become less sexy and products are kind of the commoditized and they're very similar in all these different stores, some way to stand out is actually speed and curation of your merchandising. Um, there are, dispensaries around here where they will switch out their gummies and the flavors and the strains like every 2 weeks, right? And part of that can actually be to help feed you more data in understanding what products and strains or flavors or activities are going to be important to your customer base. Do you have a customer base that doesn't want to taste the like hempiness and the cannabisiness of a product? You can also take your first party data and understand and sort of like segment people out based on the categories of products or brands of products that they typically buy. And you can take that information and start to curate product clusters of researchers in your area to then use your first party data to help you find other people like them. And if you know that your, gummy product with dialed in and the mango flavor does really, really well, you can start to then curate audiences that are researching for cannabis gummies near me and start to do some more highly targeted acquisition campaigns around them. So those are probably some of the things that I would kind of start looking into. The other piece is really kind of getting your loyalty program to stand out. I think in a mature market, a lot of the loyalty programs start to look same. Um, and when you take your list of, say, a consumer, someone who's super high value, that person has high OV, they're really frequent, maybe you start adding in loyalty perks that give them a true VIP experience. I got to attend this event in Denver where they had all these different cannabis brands and local vendors. They brought this funk EDM DJ who played live guitar. There was a skate rink situation. They basically booked a venue that was, they do all these things already. It's a bar, venue, skate rink, and they are also LGBTQ friendly. But this was sort of like a local outreach thing. But you can also frame that as your own VIP event, something that's exclusive to your most loyal customers. You can also take a look at your segments and say, okay, this person is super infrequent buyer. They could be a high or a low lifetime value, but every time they come to buy, they're actually pretty high AOV. So what you want to try to do there is just to get them to come in a little bit more frequently. So maybe in their loyalty program, they get an even tastier discount, but it's a limited time only, something where they have to come in and they have to buy within the next 15 days. And you're just trying to get them to come in more frequently, right? So things where you can really kind of curate a loyalty program experience, but also add in certain things that are important to your community. Like, what if they're super into social equity when you look at your consumer mindset stuff again, right? How do you get involved more in the community? Maybe you have offers where it's like every dollar spent, you're going to donate $1. If you can get your loyalty program to really fit the consumer mindset of people that are loyal to you and in your community, that can also be another way to stand out.
Okay, thank you for that. Um, let's talk about, I just want to bring something up. So in saturated markets, sometimes you hear people say that, oh, this market is just terrible. Like it's just the whole state is garbage. And I can tell you, or we can tell you from direct experience, because we work with people in every state, is that there are, even in the states that are difficult to work in, there are people that are being successful, that are running profitable companies, despite all of the restrictions, the taxes, and all the issues. So it's not that success is not possible. It's that some people have figured out a combination of their customer experience, their operations, their marketing, and they've got a formula. It's never perfect, but they've got something that's working for them and allowing them to maintain in the market and continuing to grow and hopefully get to a place where we have better legislation for everyone and it'll be easier to make money. But in the interim, success is possible, right? So in a saturated market, Courtney, how does a company know, other than just that they're not losing money, but like how does a company know that they're being successful in their market? What does winning look like?
I think Jenny covered quite a bit of this, but I'll build on that. It's they know their data, they know their customers, and they're memorable. That's really what it comes down to. I truly feel you need to know what customers are going to hold the margins, right? You need to know the ones that are going to drive repeat visits, predictable frequency. You need to know who is going to buy intentionally, and you need to know who of your customers are efficient to serve. I think winning in a mature market is really just having a deep understanding of your data.
Okay. Well, let's parlay that into talking about defending that position. Let's say you've got to a point where you have a formula that's working well enough for you. You've got a moat of some sort. And I think for some companies, they don't actually fully understand what their moat is, right? Like maybe they've got the pieces working correctly, but they may not know exactly which parts are the ones that are actually keeping them differentiated and competitive in the market. And so, Mo, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think defining a competitive moat is not an everyday exercise for most people. So this could be kind of new information or a new way of thinking about it. But your moat is what is giving you a protection against something changing tomorrow, right? Like if there aren't limits in how many licenses are being distributed in your area, you can't have a moat around your location. If there are, then you can. But things that can't be taken away one day to the next. I really want to reemphasize what Jenny said about community partnerships, showing what causes you support locally, being integrated into your community. It's such an opportunity to speak to what your business stands for and also what the other behaviors are in the community. So although you can't stop someone from opening another dispensary across the street, if there's another license distributed, if your location is in a spot that's been seeing protests and you want to say you stand for immigration rights, like having that in your local zeitgeist and just being tapped into that is important. Maybe you're near a cat rescue or some sort of like animal adoption facility, and you can have a day where you host that in your an adoption day in your store. Like, find out what else is happening and what you care about as a dispensary and really integrate that. So that's like on the boots on the ground side. Going back to first party data ownership in the digital space, that's also incredibly important. Having a good POS in your store gives you in-store visibility to, what's selling, what might be able to what other stores, may not have if you're vertically integrated, like what products you can consistently have available. Like Jenny said, some dispensaries have new strains. It seems like every other week. Some, build SEO around specific strains. They know if they're vertically integrated, they know they can typically have those strains in stock, and they have some sort of um, you know, sway over what is actually going to be available on their shelves. And I know that's not possible in every market, but when you can, understanding not only like what your data is telling you and from your POS, but also understanding if you have a great marketing product, it can give you behavioral insights for certain types of customers and how they orders, right? So in digital marketing, we're thinking a lot about pre-order customers. That is really what we're tracking. We are trying to understand who is going to pre-order for pickup, and that consumer behavior, like having data around that consumer behavior, could be totally different than your general in-store. What is selling through from your SKUs in store. So it's really important to think about how your dispensary shelves can be a reflection of your activated data and also a reflection of what you stand for in the community.
Great.
Okay, I have to say it. Creativity. How do you build? Oh, like we're so data focused, but Do you guys remember Can's Can Do Thanksgiving? I will never forget that because it was hilarious and it really aligned with all of the pain points that I know everybody feels during Thanksgiving and dealing with all of their fun relationships at the table. Creativity can be a huge moat here. And your channel mix, don't forget, when you find those creative assets that really shine, how are you pushing them out there to those audiences? And display converts 10 times better when preceded by a video ad. When you get to the point in a mature market where, you feel all is lost, it may be time to start leaning into your creativity, into like the origins of your brand, and really mixing it up a bit and putting some channels together, testing things, really understanding your halo effect and incrementality, Jenny.
Okay. There's so much more we could talk about. We're
Yeah.
running a little low on time, so we're going to do kind of a quick 5-minute lightning round here on budgets and thinking about what channels are available, how you would divide that up. One thing before we get into that, though, I do want to mention that we haven't talked about is there's a lot of opportunity to partner with your brands on your marketing efforts. This is a way to leverage the brand's marketing budgets and what's going on with you and work together. And that can, in some cases, like double the efficacy of your marketing efforts if you have strong brand partners. But we've got a couple things we want to cover real quick, which is we want to look at the difference between acquisition and retention. We want to look at breaking up channels in terms of how you want to allocate across channels. And so we'll do it this way. Let's start with overall budget allocation. Because Mo works directly with our advertisers across their entire portfolio. So as succinctly as possible, talk about the main buckets and how people should think about them.
Um, so I think, could you say that? Sorry, could you say it again?
Yeah, so we're talking about how you would, if you have a pie of your marketing
Mhm.
budget
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
you're
Okay.
looking at your channels, how would you
Thank you.
start thinking about them? And yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So of a marketing budget, we've touched on these, but it's so important to think about your organic presence, your SEO. So I think that should always be at least a quarter of your marketing budget because it's the most sustainable, right? All the other marketing channels can be super important and um, in the short term, but if those are turned off, then they go away, right? So organic is the stabilizing digital presence that you can have, and also supports these other marketing channels because people may see your ad while they're commuting, like Jenny said, and playing a game, or while they're reading, looking at the weather, but then they may go Google it later, or they may ask ChatGPT later. So just really, really always organic. From an advertising perspective, SEM is a little bit, which is typically done by Google Ads, a little tricky, but possible and can help with search. And then, of course, programmatic. There's so many different options we haven't even gotten into today within programmatic, but you can do video, online video. You can be on people's televisions now with the advent of CTV, and I think social, having some in-house presence with your marketing budget, of course, is important. Typically, your in-house person is going to know your tone best for your social presence.
Great. Thank you. That's helpful. I think the real short version here is that even if you have a small budget, you should try to allocate it across different channels. Do not just say, oh, I'm only going to just do SEO, or I'm only going to do advertising, or only do billboards, because you're not going to know what is going to be most effective. And so you need to put at least a little bit of investment across all the channels that are available to you to see what's working best for you. Okay, I'm afraid to ask you this question, Jenny, because, wait, but, um, because we've talked about this at length before, acquisition versus retention. And then if we can layer in kind of at the same time the way that the different channels, what would be the most effective, like the easiest wins?
All right, let's see how fast I can talk. So, starting with a lifetime value metric and a customer acquisition cost metric, you can create a ratio out of that, an LTV to CAC ratio. We also have a webinar for programmatic KPIs and key marketing metrics if you want to dive deeper into that. But typically in a new market or a growth market, a 3-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio is pretty healthy. So that just means that if your lifetime value is, say, $500 on average, then you would be able to, at a profitable rate, have a $100 goal for CAC. As you go into a growth market, that range can expand. So 3-to-1 can be still a good goal, or you can go up to 5-to-1 because in a mature market, growth is often slower. So having a more efficient ratio is crucial for profitability, and maintaining that ratio is crucial. In terms of channels, I think it's interesting because I did grow up in the world where there's a funnel, right? You have awareness, you have mid funnel, you have low funnel, you have retention. And that's helpful when it comes to understanding that you do still need to have market awareness before you can start pulling people in and grabbing those shoppers and bringing them into your door and then retaining them. And but from a consumer mindset, like, we actually interact with brands and marketing and communication very dynamically throughout the day. It's not like I actually look at an ad first on my my TV and go, oh, I'm now aware. And then I go and I see a programmatic ad and I go, oh, now I'm in consideration, right? And so kind of more framing it around the goal of an LTV to CAC ratio, I think, can be really helpful, because when you're thinking about your channel mix in each place, it's more about how you want to communicate with somebody. I could go after, target a household that's 21 plus, TV ad, and that household's already been researching dispensary near me. So the way we're communicating with them is that there's a 15, 30-second ad where you can give them more information and have more of a vibe and bring your brand out to them, but they're technically more mid-funnel, right? And so that could be important. That could be a cheaper, more affordable CAC than targeting digital out of home in your local community, which is going to have maybe a longer play to conversion, also harder to track. So you're making a bet, but that could still be part of your buy in a mature market if you're still balancing out your 3-to-1 or 5-to-1 CAC ratio by investing in lower funnel channels like programmatic, like search, if you are able to play the rigmarole of Google Ads and, work with a partner like us to be able to keep you live there. So I said a lot. I love programmatic media. I think channels can work for everyone in general, but it comes to that consumer mindset and your blended LTV to CAC ratio to really determine your channel mix.
Thank you. That was
Okay, three,
that was a
4
lot.
minutes?
No, that was good. That was good.
Did that right?
I think we're just going to have a part two on this because I don't think we maybe covered half of Courtney's ambitious agenda that she put out for us to try to cover. Courtney is ambitious, which is good. So I do kind of want to wrap it up though, because we try to keep these at ideally less than an hour to respect people's time. So, Courtney, let's do this. Put another one on the calendar for some time in the future. But what are the things because I know you put together some of the topics here. What are a couple things that we haven't touched on that you really want to have some takeaways for people?
Oh my gosh, there's too much, honestly. So I guess what I will do is plug that we've built out playbooks for each one of these market scenarios to help you really make sure that you're tracking the right metrics, that you have an understanding of what you can, potentially be utilizing for your digital marketing strategy for each one of the um, situations and scenarios. And you will all get those in a follow-up email. They'll also be live on our mediagel.com/ebooks page. So they'll be there for you guys to download and look at.
Great. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up and, look out for an email for a follow-up discussion where we can get into quite a few other interesting topics that we didn't manage to get to today. Thank you for your time. I directly know that all three of you are very busy people, so I appreciate you taking the time. And we'll just wrap it up here. Thanks, everyone. This has been Cannabis Marketing Live with this time the Media Gel marketing team, or at least a large portion of it. Stay tuned and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.